Caloroga Shark Media.
John Mulaney and Olivia Munn secretly get married? Hi, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. OK Magazine says John Mulaney was wearing a wedding ring and a now-deleted Father's Day post. I've seen the now-deleted image, and he is indeed wearing a gold band, much similar to the one that I wear because I'm married. Hi, doggy. Sorry, my old dog came to visit. I thought you were napping. We have to go out. I'll tell you about Mulaney in a second. Sorry, where were we? When the old girl comes by and gives you the face, you gotta take her out. Why don't you make an edit, John? Because that's not fun. I like to let you into my life here. Anyway, John Mulaney posted a photo of himself with his son Malcolm, who's now 2, and folks noticed a wedding band on Mulaney's finger. We'll keep an eye on that. Here's a question for you. Is Jerry Seinfeld bad at handling hecklers? I'm going to play a slightly longer than clip here, which I have edited in places for pacing, but I think there's evidence that Jerry might not be good at handling hecklers. Jerry was in Sydney playing the Kudos Bank Arena. A heckler yelled out, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." Here's Jerry Seinfeld.
We have a genius, ladies and gentlemen. He solved the Middle East. He solved it. It's the Jewish comedians. That's what we have to get. They're the ones doing everything. Yeah, go ahead, keep going. They're going to start punching you in about 3 seconds, so I would try and get all of your genius out so we can all learn from you. It's a comedy show, you moron. Get out of here. You're really influencing everyone here. We're all on your side now because you have made your point so well and in the right venue. You come to the right place for a political conversation. Tomorrow we will read in the paper, Middle East 100% solved thanks to man at the Kudos Arena stopping Jew comedian. They stopped him and everyone in the Middle East went, oh my God, let's just get along. We can't do that. Because I know there are problems here with indigenous Aboriginal people and the white people. They have problems here. So maybe to solve that, I will screw up Jim Jeffries in a show in New York. If this works, that will work. You have to go 20,000 miles from the problem and screw up a comedian. That is how you solve world issues.
I feel like he was waffling there. The Jim Jeffries line is really good, but it took him 2 minutes to find that line. And you would think at this point Jerry would have a good heckler retort in his pocket, as he's been heckled several times now at Palestine. So I don't know, maybe, everybody's got a weakness. As Jerry would say, Superman is his kryptonite. Maybe hecklers are the way you defeat Jerry Seinfeld. Jerry appeared to be in great spirits as he was walking around Sydney's central business district. I shared photos in the Facebook group, which is Daily Comedy News Podcast group, and Jerry's surrounded by at least 3 bodyguard-looking type guys, and I was wondering, can Jerry Seinfeld in a baseball cap not walk around Sydney? Is he really going to be recognized? Maybe the paparazzi stalks his hotel, who knows? But sometimes if you see famous people when you're not expecting them, you don't recognize them. So if I were in Sydney, I wouldn't be thinking oh, there's Jerry Seinfeld. I'd probably walk right past the man in the baseball cap. Jerry was dressed in a long-sleeve shirt and blue jeans. He also wore a dark blue cap and had on a pair of white sneakers with red accents at the heel. Several of the Catholic websites have shared more details about the Pope's meeting with over 100 comedians. Julia Louis-Dreyfus said the meeting with the Pope was a wonderful experience, calling the Pope a lovely man who is obviously doing the best he can, and I appreciate that. Jim Gaffigan said it was all comedians, so it was like a meeting of every poorly behaved kid from church, and they stuck them all in a room. They thought it would be a good idea. Everyone had ants in their pants. Everyone was excited. Then it was like there's a bunch of funny people in a room, so, it was like ADHD cranked up. Conan O'Brien said, most of my career has been me saying, why am I here? It happens again and again and again when I'm at the White House. Anytime I'm in one of these situations, it's always the same. Why am I here? I don't belong. I think that's how a lot of us felt. We're all looking at each other thinking, something's wrong. We're in this beautiful, beautiful space in the Vatican, and for some reason they let comedians in, which is always a mistake. Stephen Colbert said he spoke to the Pope in broken Italian, telling the Pope that he had done the English reading of the audiobook of his memoir, Life. Colbert tells the story. I got the craziest call from my manager. He goes, baby, I hope you're sitting down because you're not going to believe who just called. I got a call from the Vatican saying, would you be the person to read the Pope's audiobook in English? Colbert said, I'd love to interview him, but I really want to do a cooking segment with him because he talks a lot about cooking. Evidently, he makes a great tortellini and brodo. They asked Colbert why he thought the comedians were there. I still don't know why comedians are here at the Vatican. I'm very grateful that we are. Deacon Mike, the guy that didn't hook me up with an invite to this, sent me a text over the weekend explaining James Martin S.J. Remember the whole thing where I was like, I don't think there's a comedian James Martin. There's a Father James Martin S.J. Well, apparently, Father James Martin S.J. was the de facto chaplain of the Colbert Report. Also, because it's Hollywood and everything has to be related to everything else, everyone's a Nepo baby. James Martin is the editor-at-large of the Jesuit-run America magazine, where Janine Gaffigan has a column. Nothing's ever pure. Everybody always knows somebody. There's always a hookup. I'm sure it's a coincidence. Gaffigan said he and Colbert were approached by organizers and asked to come up with a list of names of other comedians who might be willing to participate. Well, that explains why I didn't get an invite. Jim Gaffigan was like, the guy that's been ripping my bourbon for a month? I'm going to invite him. To which I would say, hey, Jim, remember when you weren't that popular and I had you on Sirius and then you stopped returning calls once you had some fame? I mean, this wouldn't go well at all. Jim said, they were like, we don't want anyone to do material. And we were like, then you can't invite any comedian. Comedians are silly, but they're also very sincere. And they've got a healthy ego. So it's like the Pope wants to meet me. Why not? It was cool. Gaffigan described the Pope as very approachable and said being a Catholic comedian is the most punk rock thing you can do, is be a comedian that even admits they believe in God, and then to be Catholic, you're like asking for trouble. What about those non-Catholics that were invited to this thing, Jim? It was universal. There was warmth, there's openness. Even with the exceeding amount of problems that have existed and will exist, it was amazing. Jim points out even non-believers are familiar with figures like Moses and Abraham and the apostles. It can be a unifying thing, and that even someone who's agnostic or an atheist can embrace the comic idea. He notes that his own religious material is not making fun of God or making fun of people that are a certain belief. It's making fun of humans. Sometimes I'll see a clip, and it's like an atheist organization that's using my material, and I'm like, all right, that's an interesting take. So it's just like human stupidity that's behind most of my material. Conan O'Brien described the Post as a really kind man and joked that he sat down in a beautiful chair. I want a chair just like that. It's the chair I deserve. He said his handshake with the Pope was quick. It's not like Santa Claus where you sit on his lap and you tell him what you want for Christmas. You can't do that. I was about to say I want a sled for Christmas. I want a basketball. And they said no. It was so quick. It was a wonderful experience to be in the Vatican. See this. It was quite extraordinary. You Italians are doing something right. This is amazing. Will Conan O'Brien joke about the Pope in the future? I'll have to think about that. I think the Pope has a good sense of humor, so we'll see what happens. EWTN News caught up with Stephen Colbert, who said the connection between faith and humor is in the back of my mind all the time. I mean, not in the front of my mind. In the front of my mind is what the joke is. But at a certain point in the back of my mind, you have to say, do I want to tell that joke? And does that go with everything else that you are besides a comedian, especially doing political satire? You're kind of dancing around with a knife in your hand a lot, and you want to be careful with what you cut. So it's lovely to hear the Pope acknowledge that there's a value in that for people's hearts, and it made me think a little bit harder about how I want to use it. Jim Gaffigan brought his wife and kids. Michael Gaffigan said, I'm going to brag about meeting the Pope. That's so cool, Jim told his son. And now you have to become a priest. Much like me, Deacon Mike, John Oliver wasn't there. He was hosting Last Week Tonight and updating us on the thing with the bakery. Remember this thing I told you about last week where Dasing's Bakery was trying to buy some new equipment that Oliver had acquired, and he said he would give it to them if they put his face on a bear-shaped cake. Remember that bit? Well, they did. And they're selling the cakes for $8 and donating the proceeds to a local food pantry, People's Place. John Oliver said, I love everything about that cake bear. It's wide open eyes, pleading, munch me. Munch bites out of my butt right now. I love the little paws, the little nose, and that each bear basically looks like it's wearing a John Oliver Halloween mask. They made those bears so fast. The guy apparently woke up to a text about our show at 3 a.m, a nightmare I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. And by 10 a.m., the bears were already on sale, and they even had honored my request that day that to be given an enormous butt. And their Facebook post announcing them saying, they have donk, all caps. And just like that, Facebook is good again. Coming up on Saturday, I'll speak with Mike Chisholm. He hosts the Letterman podcast. We talked for about 80 minutes. I might cut that up into 2 parts. But, so far the Saturday interviews are getting a pretty good review. Maybe Deacon Mike can hook up the Pope. The Pope likes comedy. I'll talk to the Pope for an hour. I can be respectful. I'm a Catholic. Come on, Deacon Mike. If you want to read me pontificating about various things, including music and podcasting, I have a Substack. It is free. It is mcdpod.substack.com. That's in the show notes. Also in the show notes, would you like a National Donuts Chain t-shirt? They came out. They're pretty snazzy. Link in the show notes. And if you would like this podcast and a bunch of others on the network ad-free, $4.99 a month gets you that. There's like 20-something shows, man. $5, no commercials, pretty good deal. Link in the show notes. Let's hit Gossip Corner. Pete Davidson did 2 shows at the Bloomington Center for the Performing Arts on Friday night. Earlier in the day, shoppers in Uptown saw Pete Davidson and several friends walking around the stores. Pete visited North Street Records, Graham Cracker Comics, Waiting Room Records, and Mother Murphy. Sounds like a cool town here. Luke is the manager at Graham Cracker Comics and said one of the customers was checking out with me and said, "Is that Pete Davidson?" Simpkins hadn't noticed because the store was busy at the time. Right, exactly. Jerry Seinfeld can walk around Sydney in a baseball cap. You're not expecting Jerry Seinfeld in Sydney. He described Pete Davidson as laid back. He was pretty chill, honestly. I was like, anything I can help you with? Pete Davidson said, no, I'm just hanging out in a comic shop. I'm doing really good. Pete Davidson did buy a rare comic, Hanna-Barbera's Laugh Olympics #1 from Marvel Comics Group. I wonder how much that's worth. Let's look. Remember the Laugh Olympics? That was awesome. I was always rooting for the really rottens to win. You either know what I'm talking about or you're like, what is John babbling about? All right, Laugh Olympics #1 came out March 10th, 1978. Cover price at the time, 35 cents. Back in October, an issue graded 9.6 by the Comics People went for $70. In June of last year, one with only a 9.2 went for $135. I'm amazed Pete even knows what this is since he was born in 1993. One of the customers asked, "Are you Pete Davidson?" He was like, "I don't know, maybe." Again, Jerry, walk around Sydney. "Hey, are you Jerry Seinfeld?" "No." And you keep walking. Maddie and Anna work at Waiting Room Records. Maddie said, "We were both kind of like, wait a second." And I prepared myself to ask a random guy if he was Pete Davidson. So I'm like, this might be a stupid question, but are you Pete Davidson? Pete Davidson said, "I might be." Again, Jerry, you're walking down the street in Sydney. "Hey, are you Jerry Seinfeld?" "I might be." And you keep going. As Pete walked in, Anna heard him say, "I'm going to do some damage here." Apparently, Pete Davidson spent around $100 on CDs and VHS tapes. Colton is the manager and co-owner of Mother Murphy's. He said he treated Pete's group like he would any other patrons of the 56-year-old business at 111 and a half West North Street. They're just regular guys. I never really thought more about the fact that there are a few guys and they want to come hang out and take a look at some cool stuff. Pete wound up buying a few tapestries that have a 3D effect when special glasses are worn. Derek Gaines, who opened for Pete Davidson, bought a custom handmade denim jacket that he talked about on stage later that night. Gaines wore the jacket during a set. Pete Davidson wore a custom-made Bloomington Fire Department hockey sweater given to him by the fire department. Also on Gossip Corner from Atlanta Black Star, remember Rob Schneider went off on Will Smith for some reason last week? Well, Ari Spears came to Will Smith's defense. Ari's jumped in on the comments on Atlanta Black Star's Instagram post about Rob Schneider, saying, "I don't like the fact that Chris Rock kept talking bad for years about that man's wife." Spears wrote, "That's not who he really was or is. Like most humans, just succumb to the pressure of being in a horrible situation with the woman that he loves driving him crazy, and he had a breakdown." In Long Beach, California, today, Gabe Iglesias gets the key to the city. He'll also do a show at the Long Beach Terrace Theater. Tickets $15. If they're still available, you can request one from your city council member's office while supplies last. To me, that sounds like a lot of work. It's just easier to spend $15. In a statement, Gabe said, "I'm honored to be recognized by my hometown in this way, and I'm proud to be able to support Long Beach's youth at the same time. If you're a kid growing up in a tough situation, you might not believe that there's a whole other world out there waiting for you, but there is. I'm proof of that, and you can be too." Out today on Netflix, Outstanding, A Comedy Revolution. A documentary examines stand-up from the 1950s through today. Features Lily Tomlin, Billy Eichner, Joel Kim Booster, and many others. It examines how LGBTQ+ comedians sharpen their wit amid a struggle for equality. Also appearing in archival stand-up performances and interviews, Sandra Bernhard, Wanda Sykes, Eddie Izzard, Hannah Gadsby, Tig Notaro, Rosie O'Donnell, Margaret Cho, Bob the Drag Queen, Trixie Mattel, and others. And that is your comedy news for today. If you enjoy the program, you'd like it without the commercials, link in the show notes, babe. See you tomorrow.